You know what's interesting is that you can mark how old you are by how old video game characters get.
Yeah.
Especially when your birthday is really close to them. So good old Pac-Man is turning 35.
Yep.
On, I think it's May 22nd. 35 years old for good old Pac-Man. Sort of the, I don't want to say he's the lost video game mascot, but he's certainly the one that's sort of been, stepped over in the past 15 years, which is a shame.
I disagree.
I know he's. I know he was throwing a bone to be in the new Smash Brothers, but other than that, you had a cartoon that no one just watched. You did have the cool, the bar game. 4-player Pac-Man Championship is excellent.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Excellent game. But I mean, talking about the kids nowadays wouldn't know who Pac-Man is.
Yes, 15 they would. Under. He's fucking iconic.
Well, I love Pac-Man.
I'm not saying you don't, but I don't think you realize how. I mean,
okay. Well, this is what I'm talking about. He is iconic. He's the first iconic. He's the first video game mascot. Pac-Man is the most important video game of all time for a lot of different reasons. Go watch the Video Game Year segment. I'll probably tweet it out the day of his birthday, May 22nd. Why was Pac-Man important? Pac-Man was important because he brought a sort of life and verve to video games that before it weren't there. If you look at video games in the late 70s, you have space shooters, you have Space Invaders, you have stuff like the Midway Western shootout game. You have very simple games, some good, some not so good.
A lot of them lack an identity. They lack characters, and even though Pac-Man's is very simple, it lacks even the most basic of narrative. I mean, Pac-Man is... You actually have a character, not a ship. You have ghosts with names that are chasing you. Not only that, it invented the maze game genre. Yes. And
well, it firmly identified.
Yeah. People are
going to say, well, there was one that came out before, it probably was. But
if it did not invent it, it firmly identified it. And interestingly, it really brought in more gamers. The appeal of it attracted not just these teenage guys, but men, women, children, all ages.
That's the most important key to this is because arcades weren't what we knew of them to become during the heyday of we'll just say 82, 83, like the heyday of arcades, or even the 90s. Is that arcades were still seedy in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like
cocaine and handguns.
You weren't going to Chuck E. Cheese in 1977.
No.
I don't think you were doing that quite yet. That's when they were starting up. But cocaine and handguns. You were playing the few arcade games. Yeah, bars, right?
Yes.
Bikers hung out there. We're not saying you were necessarily going to get stabbed, but a game like Pac-Man and what came afterwards with those, games like Galaga, a lot of the Namco games that were bright and colorful, and other companies sort of said, "Oh, this is a good idea. Let's appeal to kids that want to play these games, not just adults." Because video games were still in that sort of weird sort of area, at least in the arcade, because you did have the 2600 come out, but even that wasn't necessarily always marketed towards children,
right?
In the late 70s. So what Pac-Man did was sort of exploded out to saying, it sort of made the idea of a video game be more than just something adult, or even just being geared towards children. I think it opened it up. Like I said, characters, mascot, franchise,
just the
marketable to the mainstream.
Cartoony presentation on the side art, on the marquees. I don't want to discredit something like Space Invaders because those characters have become iconic, but I think they've become iconic over time.
They weren't.
Whereas Pac-Man was iconic immediately.
Yeah, you didn't have Space Invaders pajamas. You didn't have Space Invaders T-shirts being sold left and right, or plush toys, or a cartoon. Records, or a cartoon. Actually, there's a Space Invaders song, but you see what I mean, though? Is that, you had a freaking cartoon series about a video game character.
Yeah.
That didn't happen before. You didn't have a serial based upon a whole new media before. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that now I think people take for granted. But even now, with all the merchandise of even Halo, in that Lego knockoff, there's like Halo little figurines, whatever. Pac-Man sort of was the only one at the time. So think about any sort of genre. Imagine if there was a game that was so stood out from the rest of the pack. Imagine if Halo was the only game out there where you saw merchandise of versus any other game. That's sort of weird to think that, but that's how important Pac-Man was. To sort of, at least for that first year or two, before then, Donkey Kong comes in, and then you have pole position, gets its own cartoon and things like that. But there had to be a first game, and that was Pac-Man.
So yeah, I mean, it's funny. I thank you, Toru Yotani, 35 years ago for gifting us this, and really, catapulting, lighting the match that started the fire that would be, become video games. I wonder what Pac-Man thinks about 35, since I'm not too far from that. I mean, regrettable decisions in life, what health insurance plan he can afford.
Should he move out of his condo because his neighbors are all fucking crazy?
Should he go back and finish his college degree? Because I'm thinking about that, so I wonder if Pac-Man's thinking about that.
Has he wasted his life collecting dusty old cartridges on his wall?
No, just dusty old pellets.
Dusty old pellets.
Yeah. So happy birthday soon, Pac-Man.
We'll get you a Carvel ice cream cake.
I love you dearly.